Chapter 6. Meeting. Pranker. It was the day of the Halloween dance. Christian walked into the school with a plan. He gripped his briefcase hard as he passed the doors, and the vents blew his trench coat so that it flapped loudly. He was ready. Today was a day of retribution for those that had been lost. It was a day to get revenge on the world for straying from God. Thud. Christian dropped his briefcase on the desk at the Young Republicans Club and popped out his earbud, playing heavy Christian rock. All the jocks enjoying breakfast looked up. "Yo, Christian, that you?" Jack said, catching a stray football from under the club's supervisor view. This activity was safe. Jack got up and slapped the boy on the back. "Bro, I almost didn't recognize you in that getup." "Are those combat boots?" Senator said. You ever see Action, Rogers?" "Just listen," Christian said. His voice no longer had the weariness as was the typical him, but instead firm and authoritative. "We need to meet at lunch today. This is important." Zach leaned back in his seat. "We're already meeting tonight before the dance." Christian slammed his hand on the table, but kept his voice low. He would not raise it in anger. "It will be too late then. We must meet as soon as possible." "Is something wrong, Chris?" Senator asked. "Look, you may not have made the team this year, but we're still all a team. You can tell us." Ring. Senator shut up. It was class time now. Christian turned, his boots squeaking against the tile, and he headed to class. As he left, he saw a flash of orange down the hall. Jacob. The boy's brown hair swished as he turned his head and made eye contact with Christian. His eyes, which seemed dead, suddenly flickered with life as if a switch had been flipped, and he smiled. He pranced down the hall in the direction of the oncoming Christian. Jacob smiled and waved. With every oncoming step, Christian's heart shook, but he quelled his quaking heart. He did not return the wave. Jacob passed him, his eyes going wide. He turned his neck back at 180 degrees. Christian didn't look back. Jacob's eyes flashed with anger, then with fear. Christian continued on to class, completely unperturbed, while Jacob whipped out his phone and texted the other magical boys. Christian was prepared for today. He would keep quiet not to arouse suspicion before his big moment. He would keep quiet. For now. He marched to class before the second bell and sat at his desk like a model student. He set his briefcase beside his chair, garnering some glances from the classes, but no one said anything. The teacher soon began instruction, and Christian pulled out his notebook. He did not take notes. He planned. "Please open your textbooks to page 13 and follow along the problem 6-66. The teacher filled the whiteboard with quadratic equations, finding the arc of parabola from a set of equations numbers equal to x. Christian paid this lesson no mind. The teacher failed to cite any facts or figures during his lecture to support his conclusion. He merely asserted as fact that 2 plus x times 3 plus x was factored out from x2 plus 5x plus 6. Professional. All that was required was the quiet obedience of class. But Christian was different. He derived his own equations separate from dogma. He derived from rationality, not echo chambers. 1 man plus 1 woman equals marriage. Christian scribbled down. His pencil produced smoke when he set it down from the speed at which he wrote. This was the speed of which those who innovate, rather than merely copy, work at. The teacher continued his lesson, useless problem after useless problem, for a little over an hour until the bell rang. It almost made Christian wonder how many lies had been fed to him over this time in school. Since kindergarten, he has spent 7 hours a day learning. But how much of that information was reliable? He couldn't get distracted now. There was one area in which the world had tried to lie to him, and he was about to expose the lies to the masses, and then the rest would be uncovered. Christian sat through another class, Intro to Life Skills, where the teacher again refused to present scientific evidence and, when asked to, could only provide articles from biased sources, such as the Journal of Nature. But now it was lunchtime, and he set out to finalize his plans with his friends. It was the Young Republicans versus the world now. Christian turned towards the clubroom when, this time, white light flashed in front of his eyes. At first, he felt comforted, but then he recognized the origin of the color. It was Nolan. He turned down another hall and planned to circle back around to avoid the boy. But the second he turned around, there he was. "Hello, Christian," Nolan said. Christian bit his lip and turned back the way he was heading. Footsteps followed behind him. He turned down a bisecting corridor and immediately again into the art room, knowing it would lead to another part of the hall. He knew he had to move too fast for Nolan to follow, but when he exited back into the hall, there was Nolan, waiting for him right at the door. "I wanted to talk to you." Christian gritted his teeth and tried to turn back, but Nolan put his arm on his shoulder. "I apologize for your lack of induction in the club. However, I believe that we are still on familiar terms. Is there something troubling you? I notice you look worried from across the hall. Please, tell me about it." The Christian turned to face the boy. Nolan's glasses obscured his eyes. His face portrayed no emotion. What did he feel? What was he thinking? What was he planning? All was hidden behind the glassy glare of his eyewear and the glassy glaze of his carefully formulated cult personality. "You shouldn't be the one who's worried," Christian said, pushing past the anime club president. Nolan watched him leave in silence. He knew Christian was far too gone from his grasp to try and talk him out of it now. Christian made it to the Young Republicans club room. He waited all lunch, but his comrades never showed up. He gritted his teeth and left for class. He couldn't blame them for not understanding how dire the situation was. "So, what did you want to tell us, Christian?" the senator asked once everyone had arrived at the end of the day. It was an hour before the school dance, and everyone had left the school, except for the Young Republicans. They met in front of the gymnasium. Senator, Zach, and Christian were present, along with 2 other members of the football team. The other members were there, but left saying that they'd be right back. Christian opened up his briefcase, and hundreds of sheets of paper fell out. It was full cutouts of the school newspaper displaying pictures of the anime club and obituary columns of students that had been disposed of. The Young Republicans rifled through all of these as Christian stayed silent. "What's this all about?" Senator asked. "I've finally begun seeing clearly," Christian said. "The magical boys are evil, and the school is conspiring against all of us to take out conservatives and push their perverted agenda." The club members were silent for a moment, and then they laughed. "It's true! They want to make everyone in the school gay. They even got Tyler." Zach put his hand on Christian's shoulder. It would have been comforting if he wasn't doing it mockingly. "Look, Christian, if someone wants to suck a little dick, that's none of our business." "Yeah, it doesn't hurt anyone," Senator said. "Look, this club isn't for extremism. We wanted to improve the country and the economy." Christian threw off Zach's arm. "But it's exactly this cultural degeneration that will destroy this nation." One of the jocks piped up. "How do people being happy hurt anyone?" "You mean, how do people being selfish, perverted, and sinning against hurt people?" Christian spat back. "They're going against God's word. You all know what happened with Adam and Eve." "Christian," Senator said. "No, you call yourselves Christians, but you are just cherry pick the Bible and only follow the laws convenient for you. You're just lukewarm. This is the worldly path that will protect you in this life, but will condemn you in the next." "Christian, you sound like some conspiracy theorist," Senator said. "Isn't there some cabal controlling the school for some evil pursuit? And you know you don't just get to decide who's Christian and who isn't. You know God said to love one another, right?" "I don't hate the gays. I just hate their way of life. And don't you see, The schools lie to us in every class, every day. They're indoctrinating us into their agenda. You aren't following God's word. You're being manipulated by Satan, disguising himself as God. Okay, let's say that you're right, Senator said. Then what? What do we do about it? Christian produced his notebook full of verses, evidence, and arguments against homosexuality. This, Christian said. I found out John was planning to set up a debate about homosexuality, but the magical boys killed him to silence him. I plan to bring the debate to the Halloween dance, and we'll make everyone see things the way they are. If you supported President Smith, you should support me. The magical boys? Again? Zach shook his head. Bro, who cares about those nerds? You can't act like those are equal plans, Senator said. A debate sounds like a good idea. It isn't an issue I'm completely settled on, but we can't force our opinions down their throats. But they keep pushing their homosexuality onto us. You've seen boys kissing each other in school before, and they put socialists in our curriculum. Senator counted his fingers and responded, Gays exist and socialism exists in history. Christian, gay people existing isn't forcing them anything on us. If that were true, we would have to stop having straight relationships, or we'd be pushing things onto them. You keep acting like straight and gay are completely equal, but one is far worse than the other. This whole argument, the two boys continued getting closer to each other. Christian could feel his opponent's steamy breath on his own lips. They looked deeper into each other's eyes. Christian looked for some redeeming feature, but Senator was gone. He called himself a Christian, but he followed almost none of God's teaching. Christian turned his head away and backed up from the acting club president. The jocks that left finally returned. One of them, Andy, was holding a bucket, and the other, Dallas, was holding a large container of water. The container had a seal on it, denoted it had been blessed by a priest. Zach hopped up from his sitting position on the floor, along with the other football player, Mario. Yo, you got the stuff, Zach said. He smacked Andy on the back, causing him to stumble over. What is this? Christian asked. It was Dallas's idea, Andy said reluctantly. Hey, and you said you didn't like it. Because you told me I should do it. I don't understand, Christian said. Dallas set down a bag of feathers and patted Christian's shoulders. All right, listen, tryout failures. We're setting up a little prank for the dance. We're going to pour this holy water into the bucket and put it over the door at the back of the gym. And then when the principal uses each year, so that when he enters the room, he'll finally be baptized. What? Christian said. Christian was conflicted. Such an act of forced conversion constituted violence, but this was the enemy. But still, violence was wrong. But it wasn't him performing it. He could entice this violence and then be entirely blameless and morally not responsible. He decided not to dissuade the immoral behavior because it would lead him to an ultimate goal. While actions in and of themselves hold moral value and not the outcome, this one would have a positive outcome. Hey, why do you all look like a bunch of gays in a strip club? Dallas said. Did someone die? We just had a little disagreement, Senator said. About what? Andy asked. The loser wants to haze the anime club or something. I'm not against it, but his reasoning is a bit... Zach twirled his fingers next to his head and mouthed the words loopy. The anime club? Dallas laughed. Nah, we should do it. It'd be a pretty funny meme. But you don't understand, Christian said. They're the ones really running the school, and they're secretly killing up people who disagree with them so they can push their liberal agenda, like John. Oh yeah, if that were true, then why do they let our club meet? Dallas teased. Controlled opposition. Yeah, whatever. Andy, come over here and help me get this bucket above the door. Andy looked to Christian momentarily. Christian felt like he understood him, but he did what he was told. He followed the crowd, and he hoisted Dallas onto his shoulders. The two dirty blondes reached up to the high executive door and barely balanced the bucket. Just as they were about to step down, Andy freaked out and shook his hands. Ew! He yelled. Dallas lost balance and fell off of Andy's shoulders. Dude, did you wet yourself? Andy shook his hands, throwing liquid around. It splattered against the walls and the floor. Liquid hit Christian's face. He recoiled and rubbed it off with his thumb. He looked at his hand. It was red. Dallas's eyes were blank. His skin was gray. Blood was pooling around where he fell on the ground. Christian ran over, thinking he hit his head, but then he realized there was a hole in the center of his stomach. Something had pierced him, but whatever it was had somehow evaporated all of his skin and muscles that were in the region, leaving only just the bloody organs sitting where they once were, supported by the body. And he continued shaking his hands. Why are you suddenly so quiet? He asked. He turned around slowly. He saw Dallas. He looked at his reflection in the glass next to the gem. There was a trail of blood running down the center of his face, down to the rest of his body from where Dallas bled out onto him. He screamed. His wailing bounced down the halls and back at him, creating an echo chamber of fear. I'm sorry I'm late, a voice said, breaking through the echo chamber. Everyone turned around and a figure appeared behind them. What are you guys up to? The figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Tyler. He was dressed with a body expression, his body exposed, and it was only in underwear. His voice and head were low as if he looked down on the boys from even his small, then stature.